All right, welcome in, everybody. It is Thursday. You know what that means. It's all mid-majors. It's my favorite day of the week. And I come in still feeling pretty good. I had one play again yesterday. It was Richmond. It was my 5% play, and they battled back from what was a horrific start, almost win the game and cover the number. So we keep it going with it. I think that's 7 in a row for me now, Rob Vino. I said, when I was here losing in November and December, you couldn't lose. I said there would be a point in time where I get my sort of uptick, and I think I'm in the midst of that right now. Feels kind of good.
It's a long season. College basketball is a long season.
March is long, Rob. March is long, and we're not even to March yet.
Like those ups and downs are to be expected. I apologize to the Parlay crowd yesterday. I went out of my lane, tried to side with Temple. BP came through. You came through. Temple did not. UAB, even shorthanded, got there last night. So I do apologize to the Parlay. We could have had another 3-teamer.
I'll make you feel better about that, Rob. I'll make you feel better about that. I know you were between BYU team total under and what the play that you picked with Temple. Had you went your normal route with BYU team total under, the play I would have picked would have lost. So we were losing the parlay either way. You didn't cost us the parlay by not using that team total, which we talked about as our feature game yesterday. And that got there kind of easily, as we both expected. BYU nowhere near that 75.5 number. I think they finished in the 60s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting too, Adam, before we hit on South Florida, Memphis, that as much as we said yesterday about DeBansta being targeted, he's been targeted all season long, obviously, but now without Richie Saunders, it almost the other coaching strategy almost to that is let DeBansta have his and see who else can step up. And last night, AJ went crazy and there was nobody else to help out. He had more than 50% of their points, I think, last night. So BYU, Texas Tech, JT Toppin. I mean, the Big 12 has taken some rough hits to top personnel over the course of the last couple of days. And I'll just throw one more gripe out there. Didn't help me any last night when Darren Peterson decides to bench himself in the second half. Looking at a team total of 82.5 over, they get to 81, but he decides he's only going to play 3 minutes. Bill Self kind of scratching his head, wondering why the guy doesn't want to play. But down the road here with Darren Peterson, Adam, we have to take into consideration things that we should not have to take into consideration. And last thing, because it's on my mind, Darius Acuff Jr., oh, my Lord.
49 points, Rob.
Oh, my
Incredible.
God. What a performance.
Yeah, so, we griped about Temple, right? And it's like, game probably could have went either way. UAB made a couple more plays down the stretch, and I feel like that's been the story in the American this year. Now, our matchup tonight, like, the one thing I thought, the one thing I could say about this conference that does not surprise me is South Florida being at the top. That doesn't surprise me. I figured South Florida, that was my pick to win this league coming into this year. The surprising thing, though, I think, is Memphis not being right there with them. I think Memphis probably thought that this was at minimum a 2-horse race in this league. There's obviously some other teams that going into the season you would have thought would be in the mix. But man, Rob, I just think back to the way Memphis scheduled kind of in the non-conference, scheduling that game out in Logan, Utah over the weekend. That was clearly like a game that was set up to be like, hey, we deserve an at-large, obviously, if they could have won that game. But, Rob, do you think Memphis sort of punted on that game over the weekend, maybe sort of looking ahead to this game? Because at this point, it's really about league games and winning the American tournament. I don't know that Memphis gets into the tournament otherwise. So this game would certainly help. How are you seeing Memphis, South Florida? Do the Tigers have a chance tonight?
Yeah, that's got to be the viewpoint at this point in time, right, Adam? I don't know that they punted on that game in Logan as much as they just got blitzed by Utah State. End of first half. Go back, watch the last 2.5 minutes of the first half, and then the way the second half started, and Utah State just was an absolute tidal wave against Memphis. Memphis really had no prayer of matching points with them. And then, of course, we talked about it at the end. Utah State piled on with the last couple of buckets. Obviously, for obvious reasons, right? They're trying to get something on their resume, and Penny probably still carries a little bit of that bitter taste into this game. Not that it's pointed directly at South Florida, but certainly they want to get back on the floor here. So, to your point, Memphis winning the American is about the only route at this point in time. South Florida's played better as of late. Really have, especially on the defensive end. I think they've gone 3 straight unders at this point in time, even though they're still scoring points. I don't know how long that could continue. I'd expect Memphis to have a pretty good offensive night here. You've got two teams that want to get up and down. There were a lot of sincere Parker forces the other night against Utah State in an attempt to come back. I mean, when you get behind, you try to do too much. But that trio of Bradshaw, McDaniel, and Parker, they still match up pretty well with South Florida. South Florida probably, to me, has a little bit more depth and probably are a little bit better as they still get accustomed to the style of play. But I think they're a little bit better at it than Memphis is at this point in time. Now, Memphis has been a good defensive team inside the conference, number 1 defensive efficiency team. But I mentioned off the top that South Florida has improved their defense a little bit too. That game the other day, here's one thing that I do worry about with South Florida is, did the Florida Atlantic game take a little bit out of them? Boy, that was a tough game. Overtime, back and forth. That game could have went either way. South Florida gutted it out, showed a little something in that contest. For me in this one, it's been hit hard. But I thoroughly understand people who looked at 153 for a total in this game and said, oh my God, I have to get to the window fast. They did. It's now up to 159. Could I see both teams getting into the 80s here? Maybe. However, the counter to that would be, this is a crunch time game at the end of February, and you would expect you would expect maximum defensive effort to show up here despite the pace. So now getting to 160 becomes a little bit more difficult. Value may be gone out of that number at this point in time. You got to push from 8 to 8.5, Adam. I don't know. I think South Florida is the better team, but 8.5 better? I'm not so sure, especially when I add in the extenuating factors of what happened in Logan, Memphis wanting to get back out on the floor, Memphis being in sense of urgency mode to win the American, et cetera, et cetera. 8.5 seems a little large. And where total is concerned, I just feel like 159, maybe they've taken all the air out of that number right now.
Yeah, I have some thoughts here. I mean, this is certainly not what this wasn't a feature game pick because of like crazy opinions. It's a feature game because it's on ESPN2 and it's one of the only sort of like, national TV, like marquee type games tonight. But these two teams are at the top of this league, and this is one of the bigger leagues in action, so I suppose it qualifies. I'll comment on something you said, but first I'll go to Bayou in the chat. Penny as a dog is never a bad option. Yeah, historically, but he hasn't been as good as a dog this year. Some of that Penny is nails as a dog stuff has been sort of not the case this year. He has not been like just lights out in the underdog role. Now, I don't know that I don't know that I want to go against Memphis and lay the points with the last two. I guess the way the last two games have gone, but I referenced on this show I thought the UAB game coming after the Tulane loss was the game that was really going to sort of like determine which way Memphis was going to go the rest of the way. They were either going to respond to that loss to Tulane and get a win and get back into the mix, or this was going to be the type of year where it's just like not very good and we'll show up at the American tournament and see if we can get a run going. They knocked off UAB. They went on the road, won that game in Birmingham. I believe they actually ended up being a slight underdog. Yeah, they were a slight underdog there, maybe like a point and a half. They turn around, blow out Charlotte. But I got to be honest, Rob, the weekend or the road trip thus far was pretty disappointing. I thought they would have given a better effort at North Texas. That is not a very good North Texas team, in my opinion. They lose that game. And then just lifeless in Logan. Give up 99 points. just that to me right there is like a pretty big concern. Now you're on your third road game in a week. And that to me is concerning on the Memphis side. As far as South Florida, what I'll say about the South Florida defense, they almost have kind of a defensive coordinator of sorts. So they hired Tobin Anderson, who was the head coach at Fairleigh Dickinson. He was the head coach at Iona. Many MAC people feel like he kind of got a raw deal getting let go by Iona after last year. And so Brian Hodgson hired him to coach their defense. And so I wonder if, there was a little bit of a period of time where they were trying to adjust to almost like having a defensive coordinator of sorts. But Rob, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that they're playing better defense now. They literally hired a coach just to coach defense, and he's a good coach. So those are things that make me kind of like the South Florida side, but I just don't know that I can get there at the current number.
Yeah, it's interesting with them, Adam. The better the defense has been, the offense hasn't been great from a shooting perspective. I mean, they've got 3 wins in a row here. Shoot 41.7 from the floor, 42.3 from the floor, 42.5 from the floor. Those are not numbers of a stellar offensive team. I mean, they're scoring right now more due to pace and some free throws than anything else. Their 3-point percentages the last 2 games before Florida Atlantic were horrendous. But as I mentioned, they got to the free throw line in those 2. But the defensive numbers, outstanding here. And I said this at the start of the season, and it's funny, it's 3 months later, and it's coming back to mind here as I look at Memphis. And I don't know that Doug McDaniel has been that big of a help to this team. Now, I said off the top, I thought that their trio at the top of Parker, McDaniel, Bradshaw match up pretty well as far as threesomes go. But the play of Doug McDaniel, I thought could have been a lot better this year. Hasn't been. I don't know. His offensive contribution to the team hasn't been what I thought it would have been. And Memphis, again, I think I've talked about this before too. They're so hard for me to handicap because of the variance in how they play on the offensive side. Like their game totals will stray from high 130s to 160s, mid 160s. And you're wondering why is there such variance constantly with Memphis? I think it's because they just aren't getting the major contributions that they expected. In this game, maybe defense can carry them. As 8.5 just looks large with South Florida here to me. I haven't played the game, just my thoughts. Again, like you said, it's our featured game because it is what it is. We probably could have gone William and Mary Campbell. We could have gone out west to the Big West. We could have gone a lot of places for better games. But I could see a little bit of a Memphis play here plus the 8.5.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it wouldn't surprise me if this game ends up being tighter than like their right? Like Memphis coming in didn't really look good in their last 2 games. It wouldn't at all surprise me if they show up national TV. I do feel like that's a way that Penny has been able to sort of rally his teams in the underdog role, like being in that sort of national TV spot, first place team in the league. So yeah, you're not going to see me lay 8.5 here with South Florida. I might punch back on that over. I kind of feel like this is going to be a little bit of a battle. And just going back to what you said, the South Florida defense being better of late, knowing that they brought in Tobin to make the defense better. And they really weren't good earlier in the year. And I think that's probably because he probably had to tear it down and rebuild it to an extent, right? To get the defense playing the way that they would want their defense to play. And I think you're seeing the payoff of that right now. So maybe a Memphis team total under, game under. I can't argue with 8.5. I wouldn't be on the other side, but ultimately not a game I'm going to play, but very interesting game. And that's a national TV game tonight.
Two things to consider real quick before we move on. I always point out that coaches like to correct what went wrong. Giving up 99 points to Utah State, defense has to be the focus of Memphis here tonight against this team. And the second thing I'll bring up is that it's the first year under Brian Hodgson, and Memphis and USF haven't played yet. It's this late in the year, and they haven't played each other. So it's the first time Memphis is seeing them in this particular style. I guess you do have 20 some odd, rolls of game tape to go through. But until you're on the floor against it, it's a little bit different. So there's a lot of variables in this one, Adam, where we could counter argue or counter debate back and forth on who to play, whether it's over or under. But I think I'm trying to enhance the point about under at this price now. 150, 160 is going to be, it becomes difficult to get to in a game with this amount of meaning, especially for the underdog side. It's a lot of meaning here for Memphis.
All right, let's hit Garth in the chat. Thank you for the donation. Much appreciated. Garth says, let's talk a little A-Sun ball. Central Arkansas and Stetson. You got to love that, Rob Vino, about Thursdays. Like, those are the types of games that are basically that is what Thursday's slate is. Outside of, they didn't even try to slip a random Big Ten game. Every once in a while, the Big Ten will slip one in on a Thursday, and it'll be like Penn State playing, Rutgers or something like that, and it just gets lost in the shuffle. Not even that today. I don't think there's a single power sort of quote unquote power conference league playing tonight, which is great. It gives the mid majors consistently get pushed pushed to the back in college basketball these days, and so it kind of gives it's a full mid major slate. This one, I believe, this is in DeLand, Florida. I've never been there, but that is where Stetson University is located, and this of course is not your Stetson team of a couple of years ago that made their first NCAA tournament. They have kind of lost the players that were on that team. I can't remember if it's the same coach or not, but they're a pretty big home dog here. Garth says he leans Central Arkansas, laying 8.5 on the road. Central Arkansas has been a lot better than I expected them to be this year. I'll say that. They now his name's going to escape me here. They ended up getting a player back, I think. That was So Cameron Hunter last year was hurt, I think he was hurt for most of the season, or he transferred and didn't play. So him coming back to this team was very intriguing to me, because back in 2022, he was one of the top scorers in this league. And he's been that this year for Central Arkansas, 18.8 points per game, a big time game changer. And so he is the reason that, in my opinion, that this team is as good as they are. Now, they're starting to creep into territory that I did not think they could get to. Okay. And that's where I'm going to kind of start the handicap here, because the clear better of these two teams, Rob, is Central Arkansas. No one is going to debate that. But now you're starting to get to a point where they have a shot to win this league. And that was something that I did not see happening. And I am not the most tuned in A-Sun guy. So I'll just say that this is the Atlantic Sun tends to be a tiny bit of a blind spot for me. We've actually had luck kind of playing against Florida Gulf Coast a couple of times this year. I think I was on to Austin Peay being really good, maybe ahead of the curve on that. I did not have Central Arkansas up there at 12-2 with a shot to win the A-Sun regular season. So for me, let me see if I have my number to this. I don't know if the way I handicap games, if I could really lay 8.5 on the road here. And I'm just going to double check. Yes, I do have. So yeah, I was at 7.2. That doesn't surprise me at all. I knew I would be a little bit off, because the market has really bumped Central Arkansas up at this point. So my question for you is, Rob, is that bump up valid in your opinion? And can you get there with Garth laying the 8.5 on the road?
Well, it's easy to see where Garth is coming from, right? I mean, Central Arkansas 8-1 against the spread last 9 games. 6 of those 8 covers, Adam, by 6.5 points or more beyond the closing line. So not just barely covering, but destroying this league. And first time around, they destroyed this team, 93-73 in that game. Central Arkansas put it to them. That game was at home. Now we got to go on the road, but Stetson hasn't been anything to write home about on their own home floor. They're in the midst of a bad run themselves. I think 2-6 over their last 8. So I can honestly understand where he's coming from. And then you add to it, Stetson is off that tough Florida Gulf Coast game the other day. I think it was a 2-point game. I'm trying to look up the final, 76-74 final in that one. So You add to it the taxing minutes that they played, the fact that they've already been blown out by this team. The one thing you would worry about, I guess, in a road game, if you're going to play the road favorite, is perhaps you look beyond this team. You've beat them by 20 already. They're kind of floundering in the standings down to the bottom half. But the fact that you have a shot at the top spot, to me, kind of negates that mindset. It's like, let's go. Let's go catch Austin P. So for me, I could thoroughly understand it. I'm trying to look and see if we've had any real movement on this game here this morning. Central Arkansas from 8. Yeah, you see a couple of 9s out there now. So a money opinion with Garth as well. Like I say, I can understand it simply from the simple fact that whether it be home or on the road during this 9-game span where they're 8-1, they're destroying the closing line. It hasn't been close. So that sort of takes a little bit of the worry of laying 8.5 out of it because you have a team that's winning excessively against the point spread. So, yeah, I would have to agree with Garth here. Stetson doesn't seem like a team that's going to put up a ton of fight. They certainly won't put it up on the defensive end. And Central Arkansas, from my memory, Adam, of Central Arkansas as a team, used to be all offense with 0 defense. And now Central Arkansas is the second best defensive team in the league, which is kind of a change perception-wise for this squad. So, again, I could understand where Garth is coming from here with the road favorite.
Yeah, over the weekend, Stetson probably played one of their better games. They were right in the mix on the road against Florida Gulf Coast, end up losing by 2. I think they covered like as a double-digit favorite in that game. So if you kind of are looking at the angle like, hey, this is a bad basketball team this year, Stetson, that is, they've, kind of covered back-to-back games, and how likely is it that they're just going to string a bunch of covers together? Because, again, this isn't a very good team. You could go that angle as well. For me, the number, I just feel like you're paying a little bit of a premium, but we've talked about this on the show in the past. Like, as long as you're not paying like an egregious premium, like just because you're not getting like insane number value does not mean you can't bet something, right? Like, I think I said, what did I say? It was at 7.1. I lost my spot. I think I said 7. It was in there. I was in that between 7 and 7.5. So yeah, like, I think you can still acknowledge that the books are shading a little bit towards Central Arkansas, but that's not like you're going to need more probably to talk yourself off of playing them. If you just love the matchup and think this is going to be a blowout, there's not a huge difference between 8.5 and 7.5. And so if you did get in at 8.5 or 8, or I think 8.5 was like what was pretty much available, I'd be fine with that. Where I would start to dip and where I would start to maybe just pass is if you get to 9.5. I think that's too far away. For me, that would be too far away from what I made the number and where this opened, where like this is one where if I could have got 8 or 8.5, 9 or 9.5 is too far away. But yeah, Garth, I can't. These are teams. Yeah, this opened 8. So this opened 8. So 8 or 8.5 is fine. But I do see the 9s popping. Wouldn't be surprised if it got to 9.5. These are the types of games on the extra board. Not many people are going to bet them. If you get one-sided action on Central Arkansas, you might be up to 10. So I don't disagree with the 8.5, but these are just not two teams that I've dealt with enough this year to like be super confident in playing that game. So yeah, but yeah, good luck if you play the Central Arkansas. I know they're the Bears. I just don't know if they're the Purple Bears. But Rob, they do play on a purple and gray turf football field. That I do know.
That is true.
Let's move. All right. So I told Brian Power that he's here till further notice, meaning like we're going to let him join the parlay until he loses one. Yesterday, BP came through with a Fordham team total under. It was another easy win. So I hit him up right before showtime. I said, you're giving out a pick. You're making this a 3-teamer till you lose one. He said, no problem, Trig. I got one I love today. So we're going to go to Brian Power's parlay leg right now. And we're going to head to the Ohio Valley. So if you thought the A-Sun was in the weeds, Rob Vino, let's go to the Ohio Valley. Although these, I think, are two of the higher profile teams in the Valley. And I fully agree with Brian's handicap here. So to hear, again, BP's giving out games that he broke down on Morning Wager, which is his show with Mark Zinno. So you can get Brian Power's breakdown on this game. BP wants to target Little Rock. And so Little Rock tonight is going to play UT Martin. He told me, he goes, not related to Drew Martin, is what he texted me on that, which I thought was funny. The UT Martin Skyhawks, the upstart team, one of the upstart teams in all of college basketball, Rob. I got to be honest. I was wrong. Like, I got both of these teams wrong this year. When UT Martin came out early in the season, I think they may have knocked off UNLV. I think they may have beat Bradley. They hung around with Florida State, and suddenly they were everyone's favorite team. And I was like, oh boy, this is North Florida from last year, where they had a couple good results in November, and they're going to fall back into the middle of the pack in their low major league, and we're going to be able to make all sorts of money playing against this team. I was wrong. They are 12-5. They come into play with tied for first with Southeast Missouri State at the top of what has actually been a very solid Ohio Valley Conference. I got to say, like, I probably watched more Ohio Valley Conference basketball this year than any year of my life to this point. Tennessee State 11-5, Moorhead 11-5, Edwardsville 10-6, Lindenwood 10-6. Like, all these teams are very close. It's actually been an intriguing league to watch. And then you've got Little Rock down there at 7-9. And this is where I say, well, I kind of got it wrong. I thought Little Rock was going to win this league. I thought this was the best team in this league coming into this year. And this is another one, Rob, where for 3 weeks now, I've been looking at every single game. I show value on Little Rock. Never fails. Every single game. And then every single game, I'm like, don't do it. Right. You don't have to fade. You know, they've lost 4 in a row. You don't have to do it. They've lost 5 in a row. You don't have to do it. Right. They actually ended up losing 6 in a row before they finally beat Western Illinois, which you and I highlighted the other day is one of the worst teams in college basketball. I nearly played Little Rock over the weekend at Eastern Illinois. Thankfully, talked myself off of it. They go in and lose to what I don't think is a very good Eastern Illinois team. Brian Power wants to take them here against Tennessee Martin. His reasoning, it's a horrible spot for the Skyhawks. My numbers agree with him, but I just have not been able to get to the window with Little Rock. So I'm going to let BP do it for me. I don't think I'll be joining him for a client play, but I'll certainly be rooting for him tonight. He wants to take Little Rock with the points here, plus 2.5. My numbers love it, but I've been so wrong on this team that I can't, it's hard for me to be super confident about backing this Little Rock team. So how do you see his parlay leg, Tennessee Martin, Little Rock? And if you want to talk about the total, you can do that as well.
Well, we said it yesterday. We're not going to argue with Brian Power.
He's whether right. Or not, you just do what he says at this point.
Whether I think there's something contradictory or not is meaningless. Where his plays are concerned right now on Fire BP. So we're going to support that play. There has been one game to go off of between these two, and it was a tough loss for Little Rock, 55-52 on Tennessee Martin's home floor. So you do have a revenge angle from I don't want to call that heartbreaking, but when you lose by 3 as a dog on the other team's floor, you feel like when you come home, you have an opportunity to knock them off now. So I'm sure that Little Rock will come out here in the right mindset, fully focused, motivated, all of that stuff. For Tennessee Martin, it is off of an overtime game, an overtime win against Southeast Missouri. As you mentioned, those two at the top of the standings. So again, we just talked about a game where the minutes were taxing, exerting, and now you have to bounce back and do it again, this time on the road. There's not a lot of separation between days, right? I mean, you just played Tuesday, Wednesday off, make a road trip, and try to apply the same effort that you applied a day ago, 2 days ago. So from a situational standpoint, you can build a huge case for the Little Rock side. Martin has been great. Tennessee Martin has been great on both ends of the floor. Number 1, offensive efficiency in the Ohio Valley. Number 1 in defensive efficiency in the Ohio Valley. Hard to argue any of their statistical numbers. So I don't think you're going to make the argument from a player fundamental type standpoint, but you can make it from the situational angle, which it sounds like where BP is coming from, because you started off what he texted you by saying horrible spot for Tenn-Martin. And I would agree, horrible spot for Tenn-Martin. First time around, it's not like either team lit it up offensively. So you take a 107 game and try to apply it today. Let's just really quick here. I'm looking at the total's been bumped up to 135. So, are they basically 30 points better today than they were the first time they met? I'm not sure. It seems like this game again would take on a defensive connotation. The one thing I worry when I play totals with Little Rock is, again, like Memphis, their variance. They just don't shoot straight. They haven't shot straight for a couple of years now, and they could be a 53-point team or they could be an 83-point team. So it's really hard for me to tell total wise. So we'll stick with BP in the situational spot here, plus the 2.5 home dog for Martin to UT Martin. This is a difficult game to come back from off of that game on Tuesday night. If this had been like a 4-day break before they had to play this game, maybe think a little different, but I'm with them here. I think it's a good side.
So I think the reason they played that game on Tuesday is the Ohio Valley League had a bunch of cancellations from the storm. Like Tennessee specifically, Tennessee, Northwest Arkansas, like that area got hit pretty good with that winter ice storm. And so I think that's the reason that game was put on Tuesday. I don't believe this league plays on Tuesday typically. So yeah, you throw that extra game in there, and now they've got to go to Little Rock. That's not going to be easy. The one thing I will say from a matchup standpoint that supports the Little Rock side, this is a Little Rock defense. They're going to play zone, and Tunga Thatch, Gatkek. I just brutal. I'm bad enough. I can barely pronounce like normal names, and then I get thrown that one. But anyway. Gatkek for Little Rock, 6'9", kind of the anchor of that zone that they want to play. So he's one of two things is going to happen. He's a really good rim defender. So I think you potentially keep Tenn-Martin a little bit off the rim, which is kind of where they'd prefer to be. If they force Tenn-Martin into some threes, that's not great for them. 3-point percentage this year, Tenn-Martin, 343rd in the country. And the thing is, they will take them at times. So here's what Tenn-Martin's will like. I noticed they did this to Eastern Illinois a little bit, and it's the way they sort of ended up winning that game. Tenn-Martin's not afraid to take the three, but then they're just going to crash the glass and try to get the rebound. So that is like almost how they offset not being the best 3-point shooting team. They'll take the shot and then they go and get the ball, and they're 12th in the country in rebounding. So they're going to have a pretty considerable rebounding edge here on Little Rock, but still, I don't know that that's the best strategy against a team that can kind of defend, that's going to play a little bit of a zone. The rebounds are going to be a little bit more random when you're talking about a zone. And so if they're not shooting it well on the road, it's not like they're going to get to the rim on Gatkek. Like, he is a very, very good rim defender and elite shot blocker. So I kind of think this all around could just be a bad setup. I think BP is right. It's just a bad setup for UT Martin. And even the first game, which was at Tenn-Martin, was still a 3-point game played in the low 50s. So, you're talking about, I'm sure BP liked it better at 3. It's now 2.5, but for the sake of our parlay, 2.5 will work. So Little Rock plus 2.5. That's Brian Power's leg. And I will, as we talked about that game, Rob, I'm officially I'll officially co-sign that. That is 100% how I would play that game. And the only reason I think I'm not going to play it is because I have a whole bunch of other plays for clients today. And I just have been on the wrong side of Little Rock luck this year. I don't have their luck factor in front of me. I bet they're a pretty unlucky team too. They've lost a couple of games right at, that could have been wins that I think have flipped their season one way or the other. All right. I am, because I have so many, I've already locked in 3 client plays. I may have a 4th. It's kind of, the last 2 days, Rob, I've been pretty conservative where I did have 5%ers, but it was my only play because I kind of like loved one thing and didn't really like anything else. But then you give Trig a slate of all mid majors. I have no self-control. Like there's, I'm going to have more angles. So I've already locked in 3 things and I don't think I'm done, which means if you want all of those, get mine and Rob's package, the double the CBB firepower. It's a 3-day package, but I've been given the okay from the home office. If you want Rob and I for the rest of the season, that means every play through March Madness. And Rob and I are going to cook on those little tournaments, NIT, CBI. If they're playing a pickup tournament at the Y that they'll put a line out on, Rob and I have got you covered on those. So that's going to get you myself and Rob at a heavily discounted rate. I don't know what it is. I just got the message. It's discounted. So if you want Rob and I for the rest of the way till they're cutting down the nets, one shining moment, you got to email the girls, say something nice, tell them they do such a great job because they really do. And you can get myself and Rob the rest of the way. All right. I'm going to give out my leg of the parlay. But I'm going to give out my leg of the parlay, but I'm going to let you talk to Garth about the total. So Garth says late night degen play. Yeah. Apologies in advance for keeping you up till 2 in the morning to see if the parlay wins or not. But I'm headed out to the island. I played Cal Poly plus 12.5 for clients. I do think they've taken a little bit of money. So while I'm looking at seeing what the market price is for this, Rob, why don't you go first and talk to Garth about the total? He says first half under 77.5. First of all, great way to get yourself to bed an hour earlier. Just play the first half. Then, if you're on the East Coast, you're in and out by 1 a.m. He said this has been a trend for a few seasons now. Hawaii first half home unders. Pretty good defensive team, Rob. What do you think? Hawaii, Cal Poly, total. Talk to Garth. I think you're muted.
You're right. I was muted. A really good defensive team, Hawaii is, and they just got trashed on Saturday night by Cal State Northridge, 84-60. So that going back home, that 84 is going to be somewhat of a focus. First time around against Cal Poly, 86-66. To hold Cal Poly to 66 at Cal Poly is an accomplishment, to say the least. Poly shot terrible in that game. Hamad Musa, 2 of 13 from 3. The top shooter for Cal Poly. So 2 of 13 is not going to get it done. 8 of 32 overall in that game. First half in that one, Garth, was 41-36, 77. So right on the number you posted. I think I saw in your comment that it was either 77 or 77.5 probably. So just under. But I would have to somewhat agree with you here simply based on the fact that Hawaii, which is kind of rooted, not even kind of, they are rooted in defense. After the 84 points allowed to Northridge, I just feel like that's the focus to start the game here. Let's go out here. Cal Poly is a team, and believe me, made enough money on them playing overs this year, all the way back to the UCLA game where I remember Sky Clark at halftime saying, we had no clue that Cal Poly could come out and shoot threes the way they did. They can do that to you if you're not aware of them. But obviously, Hawaii, second time around, are very aware of them. They were very aware of them the first time. Like I say, the three-point shooting was held to a minimum in that game. So I don't know why that would change any. All that being said, it still climbed to 77 first half in that game. So the number that you have here could be without the amount of wiggle room that you would like, but I would counter that real quick by saying that game was in Cal Poly. This one's in Hawaii. The trip to the island, never easy. So Poly gets off to a slow start here, and perhaps that's the way to go. I would never discount Cal Poly's team total for a full 40 minutes, but if you're going to discount them at any point, it would be in a situation like this where Hawaii is coming off a terrible defensive performance, back on their home floor, seen the team once already this year, held the team down once already this year. So the only thing I think in the liability column for what you posted their first half total would be the fact that despite poor shooting out of Cal Poly, it still got to 77 the first time. Again, I think there's reasons to believe that you could shave about 4 off of that and maybe end up with a 73. You could see Hawaii, the money's come toward Cal Poly a little bit here in this game, and maybe rightfully so, because I don't know about you, Adam, but asking or giving 12 or 12 and a half to Cal Poly, the way they play offense seems a little bit outrageous. But specifically isolating, zeroing in on first half total, I think Garth may be onto something here. And I didn't realize that it had been a trend first half on the island last couple of years. So if you have that in your back pocket as well, that's a good thing for the play here. So won't talk you off. Could only try and help enhance with hopefully what I said helps a little bit here. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. It's going to be probably a pretty good game. I think Cal Poly's got a little revenge on their side too. They didn't like getting beat by 20 on their home floor against this team.
Yeah, so that's where we'll start my handicap for this game. So what I'm going to do, since I got this out earlier this morning, 12.5 for clients. That number is gone, but there's still plenty of 11.5s out there. I'm going to put a juiced 12 in our parlay. That way, and what I'm also going to do, I'm going to add minus 120 juice to both my leg and Brian's leg. So that way, even if you have to go like as far as minus 130 to get the same number, you can do that. So, but for clients, we got 12.5 earlier this morning. And here's my reasoning why I like Cal Poly in this spot. So I got like 4 bullet points as to why I'm going to stay up until all hours to see if I can win a bet tonight, Rob. The first one, I didn't play this the first time around, but I remember this game the first time around. And the reason I didn't bet it was because I missed the number. Cal Poly got slammed in that game. I remember kind of being, just getting in too late. Missed a multi-point move, not going to chase steam like that, ended up sitting it out, and it turned out to be the right move because they got crushed. They lost by 20. They couldn't hit a shot. Cal Poly 8 for 32 from 3, and most of those misses were out of the gate. So they kind of dug themselves, if I remember correctly, they dug themselves a hole that they couldn't get out of. And then they started to hit a few threes in the second. Oh, I'm sorry. No. I was thinking of a different Cal Poly game. This one was close in the first half, and then they went ice cold in the second half. Couldn't hit a 3 in the second half. And I think that's actually off of memory. I was thinking of a different Poly game, but that is a little bit of what you're going to get with Cal Poly. They can be a little all or nothing. If their shots are falling, and going back to what Rob says, if they're hitting some shots, the way they play offense, the pace in which they play, they're going to hang around against a 12.5 point spread against probably even some teams that maybe are better than Hawaii. So that's encouraging because they can put the ball in the basket. And if they are with any sort of frequency, they'll be in this game. Rebounding was pretty even in the first meeting. You kind of go up and down. The 23 turnovers, that's bad. They got to clean that up. Again, that's even bad for their standards. Like, I don't know that, like, and Hawaii is a very good defensive team, but I think Poly, if they make a point to like look back and see how the first game went, I think that they can probably go in and say, hey, we got to take better care of the basketball. We can't turn it over 23 times. That's insane. Going to never have a chance if we're turning the ball over 23 times in a game. They did get 32 points in the paint. Again, encouraging. They're not just relying totally on chucking threes, although I do think you probably see another game, Rob, where there's a 30. I think Cal Poly's probably taken 33s in a game like this. Like Hawaii is going to more or less keep them off the rim. Now, 2 other reasons I like this game. Isaac Johnson for Hawaii only played 16 minutes last game. I don't know his status, but that to me says maybe it was an injury. Maybe he's, if he's out, that certainly changes things. Johnson's going to be one of their better defenders, so that certainly changes things if Hawaii ends up without him here. I think you actually see this move on the other side of 10. If he's confirmed out, this will go off 9.5. Again, I don't know that to be the case, but I do know that if he's confirmed out, that I think it would move even more. The final thing, and this is something that I've said on this show probably 7 or 8 times this year, when Hawaii is good and they have a good team and the perception is they're very good, which is what they are this year, the tax to back them at home is always too big. And I just don't, Rob, this isn't the Hawaii teams that we used to remember in the WAC where they're going out to Ruston, Louisiana, and then they've got to go to like some other mountainous town, and now you're going out to Hawaii. the Big West made travel to Hawaii much easier, right? All these teams are in California. Once a year, they hop on the plane to go to Hawaii. That's like, to me, I think the home court angle in terms of like the spread is way overblown with Hawaii. Now, Hawaii's 14-1 at home this year. But I mean, some of these numbers, you'll get like the quote unquote lesser teams in the Big 12 or the Big West, I'm sorry, will be like 12-point underdogs out at Hawaii. To me, they've been off all year. Now they've covered a few of them, but it doesn't mean that, like, if you're just looking at this game, like, that's still a huge number. And I just don't think that the flight to Hawaii and then Hawaii being at home is worth like 6 points. And it feels like that's what the odds makers make it worth. So that is what I'm going to go with. Poly plus 12.5. It's a 4% client play for me, and it will be my leg of the parlay. Speaking of which, it's your, so I'll either go to one more donation or you can give your leg out right now. It's up to you. If you want 6 more minutes to think about it, it's up to you.
Let me go now, because
all right,
I can't talk myself out of this. I've tried 20 different ways to talk myself out of this, mainly because of price. And I just don't think that price is going to bother me here. And I'm going to go back to William and Mary and Campbell. I wanted to isolate this and just play William and Mary over their team total of 84.5. But the more I look at it, the more I want to include Campbell again. You guys all remember the first game where Campbell went absolutely crazy and blitzed William and Mary right out of the chute there in that game. DJ Smith was incredible. William and Mary only scored 11 points in the first 10 minutes of that game and found their way to 96 against this team. Defense is optional with Campbell for sure. Offense is everything. Pace is everything. It's the same with William and Mary for the most part. That was the reason why I wanted to isolate William and Mary here. They're in a revenge situation. They, over the course of the last 30 minutes, scored 85 points, which is more than you're asked to score here tonight in 40 minutes. So I leave the chat with that because that's a possible angle here as well. But 168.5 gets my attention a little bit more, simply because of the outing that Campbell had on Saturday against Charleston. I can't ignore the fact that they were brutal, offensively brutal. And I'm such a bounce back, regression to the mean type of handicapper that I can't ignore Campbell going 2 of 21 from 3. I can't ignore DJ Smith going 1 of 13 from 3. That game was at home. They're at home again, and you just don't expect 2 home performances back-to-back like that out of a team with the offensive firepower that they have, and especially against a defense that puts up very little resistance. So I'm going to include Campbell in this. Guys, again, if you want to play William and Mary team total only over 84.5, I will probably get there myself. I'll probably have to play this thing 2 ways, but I think my primary is going to be the full game over 168.5. Again, we got 200 the first time. 200 with one team scoring 11 in a 10-minute period. Are they 33 points worse this time around? And with all the circumstances surrounding this, I just don't think so. I think William and Mary's got a big revenge angle here to come in and do what they couldn't do the first time at home. I think Campbell's got a big bounce back in them. Charleston's a funny team, Adam. Let me just divert for half a second here, because Charleston, we talked about the injury to Hickman. And since he's gone down, it seems to me like Chris Mack has decided we're going to shorten possessions from now on. We're not going to play fast. They played a 62-57 game with Campbell the other day. They just absolutely put the brakes on that game. And Campbell couldn't make shots. And that's not what William and Mary will do. Brian Earl's not going to put the brakes on any game. It's going to be all gas, both sides. I think we'll get the opportunities. You know, there were 73 free throws in that first meeting between William and Mary and Campbell. It just goes to show that the lane is wide open for these guys most of the time. And the and ones were in effect in that game. Fouls to the rim were in effect in that game. I don't know what changes here. The characteristics of these teams don't change. And so I would expect that this game finds its way to 174 and we're looking at 168.5. I mean, I could see an 89, 87 final, something in that range, 88, 87, et cetera, which is well over what we need to get here. So for me, final leg of the parlay, I'm going to go full game. I'll include Campbell here just because of what happened to them on Saturday, and thinking that in a back-to-back home game, they'll do better here against this style team. Over 168.5 full game, Campbell, William and Mary. Up.
I think you're very smart to include Campbell. And so you and I have talked about Brian Earl and how he's going to play this style. He's going to play his game pretty much no matter what. He's going to play his game, even if his players are not fit to play it. We saw him do that at Cornell. You know, I've referenced this on the show a couple times. There was a stretch at Cornell where he had a really good team and he almost ran them into the ground. Like they ran out of gas because they were not fit to play his style for the course of a whole season. I'm not saying that that's the case here at all. But what I will note, we now have this will be the third time in conference play that William and Mary is playing a repeat team, okay? And the first two times, you got the exact same game twice. You got the exact same game twice. When they played UNC Wilmington, you got the exact same game twice. When they played Elon, you got the exact same game twice. Elon zoned them. It was the same result in both games. They beat Wilmington twice, same exact game. They lost to Elon twice, same exact game. Elon, put them in a zone, and over the weekend, they couldn't buy a three. Elon just sat. They sat in that zone. They've sort of figured out that they can still play zone without Matthew Van Komen there. And William and Mary, I'll pull it up real quick, Rob, in that game was 6 for 24 from three, and it was the difference in the game. Couldn't buy one. So if you subscribe to the theory that William and Mary is just going to play the same exact game, and I don't really see why Campbell would change anything, because Campbell dropped 104 in the first meeting and won. So if those two things are true, then you probably have another game that's in the 90s, because Campbell's not going to change anything and William and Mary's not going to change anything. So I think you're right to include both. And I think you're right that it's like any number is probably good here, because this one's probably got 180 points on the low end. It could have more. I think you're going to see both teams in the night. It's going to be, again, probably the same game we saw the first time these two teams played.
Yeah, and to your point about getting zoned by Elon, going 6 of 24 from three, they still managed to get to 78 points in that game, which is, if you make a couple more threes, you're at 88. And in our case, like I say, I foresee something like 80, like I say, 88, 87, something in that range for both sides. So 168.5 looked a little bit shy. You know what? We saw 185.5 last night from Alabama, Arkansas, and we knew what it was going to be. And it just tore through that number in a flash. They were at over 100 in the first half. So I think we're probably looking at the same type of thing here.
All right, let's head back to the chat. We've got time for one more. OG Bets with a donation. Appreciate that. And yeah, we can. NEC basketball is always welcome on this show. As you guys know, I live in kind of NEC country here. I'm like about 30 minutes away from the Lemoyne campus where I live. So I watch a good amount of NEC basketball throughout and it's a great league to. There's always edges in this league. So what OG Bets says, OG Bets LTX says, I don't think LIU can score that much to lay 9 on the road against St. Francis. So let's talk about that for a second. This will be, I'm sure Long Island University is thrilled that this will be the last time they have to go to DeGaulle Arena out in Loretto, PA. This is the longest bus trip that they have to make in conference play, because I believe they fly. They're not busing to Chicago. LIU would fly to Chicago to play Chicago State. So for years, this is always, the last couple of years prior to this season, St. Francis has been very good in this league. And this has always kind of been like a little bit of a house of horrors for LIU to have to go all the way out there and play a very good St. Francis team. Rob Vino, they put their band at midcourt. I love that. First of all, St. Francis is a top 5, like extremely nice to Trig when he went there. School. They gave me merch. They were giving me snacks. Like they fed me dinner. Like it was like they really, I'll always be appreciative of the way St. Francis was when I went there last year. Got to see the team that ended up in the NCAA tournament last year. And it's sad to see them leave the ranks of Division I, but I kind of understand from a money standpoint why they're going to do that. So last season in D1 for St. Francis, it'll be the last time Long Island U has to go there. Here's a couple numbers for you, Rob, and we'll get into the spread. LIU is 14-30 all time at DeGaulle Arena. So clearly that road trip has not been kind to LIU. They've lost 3 in a row, and head coach Rod Strickland has never won there. Rod the God Strickland has never won there, who's done a tremendous job to turn around this LIU program. Great follow for NEC basketball. Nelson Castillo, who covers this team, tweeted this out earlier. Winning in this league is so important because the NEC still does a campus site tournament. So LIU has every sort of reason to desperately want that number 1 spot because it's probably going to mean they host the championship game. And Lemoyne and Central Connecticut are right on their tail right now. So they can't afford a bad loss. They might be without Shadrick Lassow here, though. And that is very important, in my opinion. He's worth something to the number. So if OG Betts is saying that he would take the points and he'd play for a closer game here, I got to agree with him because none of those things that I just said makes it a favorable scenario for LIU. And St. Francis is just kind of playing with house money, Rob. They're only in D1 for a couple more months. There's no expectations. They probably just want to finish out the year. I do believe they could go to they're eligible to go to the NCAA tournament, I believe. I had to double check on that, but I don't see why they wouldn't be. So yeah, St. Francis plus the points kind of makes some sense here. What do you think about this?
I would agree. I'm just staring at the clock at 10:57. I want to throw another game out really quick here, Adam, that we didn't get.
We can. If you have nothing to add to that one, I just wanted to touch on that because we got a donation for it. So yeah, if you want to go to a different game, go ahead.
Yeah, let's just go quick. I want to talk about what I consider to be the game of the night here: Cal State, Northridge, UC Santa Barbara, and the other night we talked about. I think you were at George Washington, George Mason, right? And we were talking about Rafael Castro and his targeted return date. Didn't happen because he didn't even come back against VCU. But Miro Little targeted this game against Northridge to come back tonight. Now you see a big drop in the total here from 62 to 157.5, which either is a little bit of knowledge or a little bit of a fake or people perceiving that maybe he won't go. Regardless if he goes or not, to me in this game, with that drop to 157.5, perhaps you're looking at a little bit of an over here. They've played once already. Northridge got the better of Santa Barbara, so this is a little bit of a Santa Barbara revenge type game. With Little, you'd probably have to pay more than the 3.5 that is currently being asked for sure if he gets announced in. But like I say, that injury news of Miro Little coming back here, I think you'd probably want to get involved earlier rather than later in this game because I think the prices are pretty good at this point in time, Adam. Northridge and Santa Barbara, the two best offensive teams in this league, not really good defensively, either one. And despite the fact that Santa Barbara would like to play with some moderate tempo, and the first time around it was held down to 139, I think Northridge will try and switch that up here. So big game. I just wanted to get that out there for everybody. Northridge, Santa Barbara. I think where total is concerned, you might want to get in earlier rather than later if you're an over player.
Without a doubt, that number expects Little to be out. And I'm the same with that 3.5 on the side is totally has Little out priced in. Like the bookmakers are pricing that with him out. If he plays, which he could, he's battling a hand injury. He's tried to play through it, I believe, a couple of times already. He could give it a go tonight. I think it would help Santa Barbara tremendously if he does, because he's a great defender and you have to defend Northridge, right? Like Northridge is not going to strike fear into an opponent on the defensive end, but they can score. I'm I think this would go off 6 or 6.5 if Little is confirmed in. If he's not, it probably stays 3.5, and you're still probably good because, Rob, what do we talk about? Northridge has that great shooting backdrop at home. All of their numbers are juiced. Their splits are juiced up because of where they play, in my opinion. So you put them on the road against a Santa Barbara team that's very, very good at home. I believe one of the best in terms of like cover margin and against the spread on their home floor in this league. Yeah, you gotta like Santa Barbara here, in my opinion. So yeah, those are good points. The Gauchos, this has been your squad all year. I feel like you're due sort of that big run into the Big West tournament with this team. I feel like they're right there.
This conference, Adam. We just love this conference tournament. We've talked about it before.
There's a possibility I might be at that conference tournament. We'll see. I'm working on that right now. I may be out in Vegas for a couple of days for this and the WAC, which like play simultaneously. So looking forward to it either way. If not, I'll probably end up in a small gym in the Northeast, maybe like a Long Island, who would be hosting their conference championship. We'll see how it goes. What I do know is we're at the end of the show, and we've got to recap the parlay. So the parlay of the day today, Brian Power still with us, Little Rock plus 2.5, Cal Poly plus 12. I'm going to throw that up to like minus 130 juice because I do see that it's moved a little bit. Just buy it to 12 in your parlay. It's going to kill the odds a little bit, but we're still going to get plus money, so who cares? And then Rob Vino is going to go William & Mary Campbell over 168, looking for points in Buies Creek, North Carolina tonight, I believe. Unless that game's at William & Mary. I don't remember. But it doesn't matter because there's going to be points wherever it is. We will see you back here for more Full Court Press. Don't forget, Rob and I have a great joint package. It's up now on both of our pages, so grab that, and we'll see you in the morning. Full Court Press Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. See you guys then.